The Celadon exchange reeked of sweat, rusted metal, and desperation. The flickering overhead lights barely illuminated the cramped, overcrowded hall, casting long shadows over the figures gathered within. Merchants, mercenaries, and traffickers, all waiting to place their bids. At the center of the elevated auction platform, Rhea stood, bound in thick alloy shackles, her wrists raw from weeks of captivity. Her opal-hued skin, a rare trait among Elari, shimmered faintly under the dim lights. Yet, despite the exhaustion evident in her posture, her golden eyes still burned with defiance. The gathered buyers whispered among themselves, discussing her value. She was strong, resilient, and, according to rumor, able to withstand extreme planetary conditions without protective gear. A prize, an exotic rarity. To Rhea, they were nothing more than vultures, squabbling over something they had no right to claim. The auctioneer, a bloated figure in embroidered silks, raised his voice to quiet the crowd. Behold, a pure-blood Elari, a warrior species trained, powerful, and unbroken. She would serve well in the mines, as a bodyguard, or as the centerpiece of any esteemed collection. He turned to the audience, a greasy grin stretching across his face. Shall we begin the bidding? A low murmur spread through the crowd. The first offer came quickly. A mere 2,000 credits, far too low for someone of Rhea's value. The numbers climbed higher, 3,500, 5,000, 7,500 credits, until the room fell into a hush, waiting to see if any would dare go further. Then, from the shadows of the hall, a calm, unwavering voice cut through the murmurs. 15,000. Silence fell. Even the auctioneer blinked, momentarily stunned. 15,000, he repeated, his disbelief evident. From beneath the hood of a worn, dust-covered jacket, Kieran stepped forward. His stature was unassuming, his appearance forgettable. But there was something in his stance, something that made the crowd instinctively wary. Kieran nodded once, producing a small device from his belt. Transferred. Now. The murmurs turned into a roar. Who was this human? Why would he pay such a fortune for a single captive? But the auctioneer's greed overpowered his caution. With a dramatic flourish, he slammed his gavel down. Sold! Kieran moved toward the stage. Rhea watched him closely, her expression unreadable as he knelt beside her, unlocking her restraints. She didn't flinch, but when she spoke, her voice was low, laced with venom. You think this buys my loyalty, human? Kieran's lips curled into the faintest smirk. Number, but it gets you out of here alive. The shackles fell away, clanking against the metal platform. Rhea hesitated for only a second, then stepped forward, rubbing her wrists. As they moved toward the exit, the auctioneer counted his profits, oblivious to the dark glances exchanged between the bidders who had lost. The deal had been made, but not everyone in that room was willing to accept the outcome. As Kieran and Rhea slipped into the narrow back alleys beyond the exchange, the hunt had already begun. The air in the alleys was thick with the stench of oil and decay, the walls lined with rusted pipes and flickering neon signs. Kieran kept his pace measured, his hand hovering near his concealed weapon. Beside him, Rhea's footsteps were silent, her movements effortlessly fluid despite her recent captivity. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke. Why did you do it? Kieran didn't glance at her. Because someone had to. Before she could demand a better answer, a shout rang out from behind them. The slavers weren't done with them yet. Kieran muttered a curse, reaching for his plasma pistol. Rhea, however, didn't seem concerned. Instead, for the first time since she had been captured, she smirked. Good. Let them try. The clang of approaching boots echoed down the alley. Kieran counted at least 5 pursuers, their shadows stretching under the flickering neon lights. Rhea flexed her fingers, shifting her weight in anticipation. The first slaver, a hulking brute wielding a shock baton, charged forward. Kieran lifted his blaster, but Rhea moved first. She sidestepped the swing effortlessly, then drove her elbow into the slaver's ribs. A sharp crack filled the air. The brute collapsed, gasping for breath. Kieran raised an eyebrow. Not bad. Rhea snatched the fallen baton, twirling it with practiced ease. You haven't seen anything yet. A second slaver fired a stun bolt. Rhea dodged, the shot sizzling past her shoulder. Kieran returned fire, hitting the attacker square in the chest. Watch your back. Another slaver rushed forward, weapon raised. Rhea deflected the blaster shot with her stolen baton, the sheer force sending the weapon flying. Kieran grinned. You're full of surprises. She shot him a look of amusement. Try to keep up, human. The remaining slavers hesitated, reevaluating their chances. They should have run. Rhea launched herself at them, her baton striking like lightning. One went down with a crushing blow to the jaw, the other crumpled after a brutal strike to the ribs. Kieran took aim at a retreating figure, but the slaver vanished into the darkness. For now, they had won. Kieran lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. That should buy us some time. Rhea scanned the alley, her expression unreadable. They'll send more, they always do. Kieran nodded, stepping closer. Then we move quickly. For a moment they stood in silence, catching their breath. Rhea studied him, her gaze sharp. You're not like the others. Kieran met her eyes. Neither are you. She held his stare, then gave a single nod. Together, they vanished into the darkness, their fate now intertwined. The city loomed around them, a labyrinth of steel and shadow. Kieran led the way through the twisting alleys, his movements precise, practiced. Rhea kept close, her stolen baton still gripped tightly in her hands. The slavers wouldn't give up easily, not after losing such a valuable prize. The faint hum of surveillance drones overhead sent a shiver down Rhea's spine. They're tracking us, she muttered. Kieran cursed under his breath. Then we need to move, now. He reached into his jacket and tossed her a small metallic device. EMP charge, he explained. Short range, but strong enough to fry anything electronic nearby. Use it when I say. Rhea caught it with ease, studying the sleek sphere in her palm. Understood. The hum of the drone grew louder. Kieran motioned for her to stay low, climbing onto a stack of rusted crates. He positioned himself on a ledge, scanning the rooftops. The drone hovered into view, its crimson scanner light sweeping the alley below. Now! Kieran shouted. Rhea activated the device and threw it high into the air. A pulse of blue energy rippled outward. The drone flickered, sputtered, then fell from the sky, crashing lifelessly onto the street below. Kieran jumped down beside her. That'll slow them down, but we're not out of this yet. Rhea nodded, gripping her baton tighter. Then let's keep moving. They darted deeper into the maze of alleys, their footsteps muffled by the damp metal flooring. The city was alive with neon lights and distant voices, but the shadows were their only allies. For now. After what felt like an eternity of weaving through back streets, Kieran finally led them to an old, abandoned transport depot. A hollowed-out freighter sat at its center, rusted and forgotten. He pressed his palm against a hidden scanner on the side of the ship, and with a quiet hiss, the door slid open. Rhea stepped inside warily. The interior was crude but functional, a makeshift safe house, a weapons rack, a storage locker, a cot. Nothing more. Kieran locked the door behind them, exhaling. We'll be safe here for a while. Rhea crossed her arms. You have a lot of experience running, don't you? He smirked. I have a lot of experience surviving. Rhea's eyes narrowed. Who are you really, Kieran? He hesitated, then sighed, tossing his jacket onto a crate. Let's just say I've been on the wrong side of slavers before, and I don't plan on letting it happen again. Rhea studied him for a long moment, then nodded. She understood. She sat down on the cot, running a hand over the bruises on her wrists. The weight of everything that had happened pressed against her chest. The weeks of captivity, the auction, the fight. She had barely stopped moving since Kieran had bought her freedom. Now, with a rare moment of silence, it all crashed down. She felt his gaze on her. You all right? I will be, she muttered. Kieran leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. You don't have to talk about it. I don't intend to. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Fair enough. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the city beyond the walls. Then, Rhea spoke again. The slavers won't stop looking for me. I know, Kieran said, which means we have two options. Keep running, or take the fight to them. Rhea's jaw tightened. I'm done running. Kieran's grin widened. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The plan was simple. Find the nearest transport hub, steal a ship, and get off-world before the slavers closed in. But simple never meant easy. As they approached the outskirts of the city, Rhea spotted the glow of patrol lights ahead. The transport hub was swarming with guards and mercenaries, all heavily armed. Kieran cursed. They locked the place down faster than I thought. Rhea scanned the area, her mind racing. What about that one? She pointed to a small cargo shuttle near the far end of the lot. It looked half-abandoned, ramp partially lowered. Kieran followed her gaze. Looks promising. Let's keep this quiet. They moved in tandem, skirting the edges of the hub, slipping between crates and broken-down transports. Rhea's movements were silent and deadly, a predator stalking her prey. Kieran kept his blaster ready, scanning for trouble. As they reached the shuttle, Rhea froze, her hand shooting up to stop Kieran. Two guards stood near the entrance. Rhea motioned for Kieran to wait. Then, before he could protest, she slipped into the shadows. A second later, the first guard went down with a silent blow to the back of the neck. The second barely had time to react before she disarmed him, struck his temple, and let him crumple to the ground. Kieran stepped forward, shaking his head. Remind me not to get on your bad side, Rhea smirked. You're already on thin ice. They boarded the shuttle, sealing the ramp behind them. Kieran quickly accessed the cockpit, fingers flying over the controls. The engines hummed to life. Rhea took a seat, finally allowing herself to relax. As the shuttle lifted off, the city shrank beneath them. For the first time in weeks, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. But she knew better than to let her guard down. Freedom had a price, and she wasn't sure how high she'd have to pay. The calm didn't last long. The cockpit alarm blared, a warning flashing across the screen. Incoming ship, Kieran muttered, his expression darkening. Rhea leaned over his shoulder. Slavers? Kieran tapped a few keys. No ID tag. Running dark. That's bad. Very. They weren't fast enough to outrun it, and if it was a slaver ship, they'd rather destroy the shuttle than let her escape again. Rhea's grip tightened on the armrest. What's the plan? Kieran smirked. I thought you liked straightforward. Not when it involves dying in a shootout. Then we'll have to get creative. He moved to the back of the shuttle, rummaging through the storage compartment. A moment later, he pulled out a small spherical device. Rhea frowned. What is that? EMP grenade, short range but enough to knock out their systems, if we get close enough. And ours too? She pointed out. Kieran shrugged. Better than getting boarded. Rhea's lips pressed into a thin line. Risky. Welcome to freedom. Kieran moved toward the airlock. I need you in the cockpit. When I give the signal, hit the maneuvering thrusters. We have to get close enough for this to work. Rhea hesitated, the weight of trust settling heavily between them. Then, with a sharp nod, she turned and took her position. Here we go, Kieran's voice crackled over the comms. Brace yourself. The shuttle thrusters roared, jerking them toward the incoming ship. Rhea's heart pounded as the slaver vessel loomed closer, a sleek, predatory design unmistakably meant for hunting. Now! Kieran shouted. Rhea slammed the thruster controls. The shuttle veered sharply, coming within meters of the enemy ship. A click echoed over the comms as Kieran activated the grenade. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a pulse of energy erupted, washing over both ships. The lights flickered. The engines sputtered. They were adrift. In the distance, the slaver vessel went dark. Rhea exhaled. Kieran's voice came through the comms, calm but smug. Nice flying. Rhea leaned back in her seat, her golden eyes locked on the fading lights of the slaver ship. She smirked. You too. But she knew it wasn't over yet. It never was.